Hello, everybody. I'm Andrea, and I'm very glad to be there with you, even if not physically, but virtually through the meaning of the internet. And unfortunately, I can't see you face to face, but I think that the possibility to give you my presentation even if I'm not there, it's something very valuable for the conference. So I'm going to move forward and start to talk about the presentation that I'm going to introduce to you. The title of the presentation is Block Propagation using Xthin. We're going to show the empirical results that we have collected during a test we performed in 2 months in the beginning of 2016 to measure the propagation time through the Great Firewall of China, but in both directions. Before starting with the actual presentation of the results, we're going to explain what is Xthin. So Xthin stands for Xthin Thin Block, a mechanism that works to effectively and rapidly move blocks through the P2P Bitcoin network. So what does it achieve is saving almost 95 to 97% of network bandwidth. And as a side effect, of course, it reduces also block propagation time. Together with another technique that I'm going to explain, extreme validation, it greatly reduces the amount of network and CPU bandwidth needed to operate a full node. So how does Xthin work? Mainly, it reconstructs a block from transaction in our own memory pool without the need of having the transaction transmitted to us from the node that announced the block. And we use a compact representation of a transaction, 64-bit hash to each transaction, and we're going to tell to the node that announced the block what transaction we have already in our mempool using a Bloom filter that contains the list of these transactions in the representation that I have already explained. And why using a Bloom filter? Because in that way we could be certain or almost certain to receive back only the transaction that we don't have already in our mempool, and avoiding the need for another round trip for missing transaction that we forget or that we fail to signal as missing in our mempool. So now let's move to Xpress validation, or Xval. It's a very simple process, largely made possible by thin blocks. During the checking of inputs, we don't revalidate transactions that were already being validated when they entered the memory pool. Typically, only 50 to 200 milliseconds to validate the full block. So, and I'm speaking of block size belonging to a ratio, an interval of 900 kilobytes to 1 megabyte. So now we can quickly validate much larger blocks on a lower grade hardware. So going straight to the result now that we have speak of the inner, or just give an overview of our Xthin and Xval works, we can move to the proper test and the proper result that we collected. So what's the objective of our test? Measuring the real-time block propagation in and out the Great Firewall of China using PU nodes. So the purpose of this collection is to having a measure of propagation time to compare to other existing P2P technique to improve time propagation, like, for example, the relay network. So what was the initial plan? We want to measure block propagation into the Great Firewall of China and out of the Great Firewall of China. For each of these two directions, we measure the propagation time using standard technique, so without Xthin. And in the next step, we measure the same propagation time, but this time using Xthin. And we compare the differences to have an idea of the impact of this technology. So we have used a lot of, or quite a few network topologies because along the way we found out that that the initial topology that we think about, the one that you see and label it as first, it wasn't robust enough to keep up the pace. Anyway, I'm going to explain the reason why we moved from the initial topology to the one that you can see in the right bottom corner in the next slides. So what we have learned from just the beginning, enforcing a network topology is harder than we thought. We use Bitcoin conf parameters, firewall rules, patching Bitcoin, but I have to say that for some reason that we have discovered only recently, the way that Bitcoin D keep up with the list of its peers was not perfect, we could say. So the thing that we have learned is that mempools need to warm up to reach a decent level of synchronization. So that means that a nodes need to stay up at least for 1 to 2 days before reaching a level of compression of bandwidth reduction of 95 or 97%. This is something that was valid at the time of the test, so almost 4 months or even more, 6 months ago. Actually, we made code software improvements that lower significantly the time needed to warm up a mempool. We also discovered that a few blocks takes a very long time to propagate. This is what we call outliers. And we are going through how we have to deal with it. Other thing we found out in the beginning was that bigger mempools gave better compression, but also bigger Bloom filters. That means that you need to exchange less transactions, but to achieve these results, you have to send a bigger Bloom filter. And this is somewhat that is not good enough, because the reduction that you have on one side is balanced from the increase in size of the other. Anyway, other thing that we have found out is that the only one node that we use as bridge between the mainland China and the other nodes outside of the Great Firewall of China, and it was Hong Kong, was not enough to keep up with all the traffic. Another improvement that we made just in the beginning of the test at the software level was prioritizing of the Xthin network messages, because we found out that in this way, the number of outliers and the measure of their propagation time reduced significantly. A clarification about these scary outliers. Yeah, they were indeed scary because they were blocks that took more than 400 seconds to propagate. But other thing that we have found out to countermeasure this phenomenon is to increase the number of peers, because the higher the numbers of peers, the lower the outliers. So another thing that we have measured to be sure that outliers wasn't something related to Xthin only is performing this kind of the same test using plain Bitcoin core 0120, and we have found out that outliers were there also with this software web version. So it was not something specifically related to Xthin. As soon as the test went on, and with improvement in softwares and that I have already mentioned, like the priority in network messages, Xthin network messages, things started to pan out. In fact, the propagation time from Shanghai to Japan and from Shanghai to Japan, or from Schengen to Hong Kong, moved from, on average, of course, moved from something that was a little around 3 to 4 seconds, moved to something like 0.9 seconds, 0.7 seconds. So the average was very good, taking into account how hard it is to go through the Great Firewall of China. But still, every once in a while, it seems that blocks get stuck. The outlier was still there. So other thing that we have learned during the last phase of this test is that we need something to let you know if the problem was related to our software or to network problem in general. So we have installed on all the nodes network latency monitoring tools in such a way to discriminate between Bitcoin deep problem and network glitches. This helped a lot to narrowing the possible causes of the problem that we will tackle. Other than that, Peter Chipper, along the way, applied 2 fixes for unnecessary downloads of headers when UPA connect. We have applied further enhancements to the priority queuing. We have also limited dozens of new connections per second that came in from well-known IP groups class, and mitigated by the setbound RPC common, or rather using firewall rules. As a matter of fact, lately, and also during the test, we introduced at code level a connection slot attack mitigation in such a way that we can somewhat avoid to spend resources for this kind of attacks. And as soon as, I don't remember, the last modification in this regard were made, I don't know, 15 days ago, and I could say that we are handling this kind of attack quite well now. So at the end of the tests, we have decided to relax the constraints that we put on our network topology in such a way that we could measure and having an idea of a more real environment, so that we have a new network topology where all incoming connections are uncontrolled. So everyone that wants to connect to our node are able to do it, as long that our associate can keep the pace. We have used the endpool as block source for new mint blocks, and of course all BU nodes was connected to each other rather than segmented like we did in the first version of the topology. So we have divided the blocks that we collect, the data about the blocks we collect, in 4 bins. Bin 1 was related to regular blocks over normal P2P network. Bin 2 was related to Xthin blocks over normal P2P network. Bin 3 was about regular blocks through the Great Firewall of China, and Bin 4 was about Xthin block propagated through the Great Firewall of China, in both directions, of course. And so the problem was that we have to have an equal or almost equal amount of blocks for each bins to have comparable data in such a way to use it to evaluate properly the propagation time. So when Xthin is enabled, there are preferred timer that give 10 seconds of advantages to thin blocks. So every time that a new block is announced, a BU with Xthin, a BU full node with Xthin enabled gave 10 seconds to other BU nodes to provide Xthin block. If in 10 seconds it's not able to receive Xthin blocks, then it could receive normal blocks also for other nodes. So to filling bin 1 and bin 3 that was about regular blocks, we have run a few days or a few sessions of the test with Xthin disabled. At the end, the results that we have found out, well, was pretty amazing, if you ask me, because we have seen that due to the amount of reduction in bandwidth utilization, we could today, with the current P2P networks, with the current constraints, both in terms of Great Firewall of China, network latency, CPU bandwidth, whatever you can came up with in terms of hardware and technology constraints, we could achieve a rate of 60 transactions per second. That means 20 megabyte blocks. So that means that we could increase the velocity, the speed of Bitcoin P2P network of more than an order of magnitude. This is pretty amazing. So, as you might have already know, Peter Wiesen made a series of 5 posts on Medium about this test that we made with fantastic graphical representations of the results, and it gave you the idea of the real impact of Xthin technology in terms of the impact it has on potentially on the Bitcoin environment and network. So even after the test was ended, we continue to improve we continue to improve our software. So the last two announcements that was introduced about Xthin was targeting Bloom filters and the use of orphan cache to populate the Bloom filter. So we have observed that including orphan transaction in the Bloom filter increased the thinness of the Xthin block. So adding to the Bloom filter orphan transactions means that we could achieve even higher compressions ratio. So better handling of the orphan cache or the orphan mempools, if you will, like no more pruning or no disconnection, using a larger cache, a larger orphan cache, using the same policy in terms of mempool expression time, have greatly improved the efficiency of the Xthin technology. Other than that, we have used also a technique that is called targeting Bloom filters to include in the Bloom filters high priority transaction, the priority that has a higher probability to be included in the next block. This, in some way, decouple the Bloom filter size from the mempool size. So you can have a really big mempool size, but at the end, as soon as you have a limited max block size, the number of transactions that have the higher probability to be included in the next block will be almost the same. So another thing that we have improved about Bloom filter was the false positive rate. That rather than increasing linearly like we did in the first version of the software, now is increased exponentially and not based on the number of transactions included in the mempool, but in the Bloom filter and the mempool, but the time. So the time to leave of that transaction. So the higher is the more time a transaction stay on the mempool, the less is the probability to be included in the next block. So just to give you an idea, these days the average Bloom filter size is about 5 kilobytes. So 5 to 6 kilobytes, or even lower, it depends. But this is just to give you an idea of the achievement that we achieved. Sorry for the repetition. Other things that we have learned that are orthogonal to the technology itself, and it's more related to the environment where we perform the test. The firewall of China bites really hard. Even SSH latency is a nightmare. Copying files through the Great Firewall of China could be really irritating. The distance, the actual distance from Hong Kong and Shanghai is 17 kilometers. I'm still to move to copy a Bitcoin T binary from one point to another. It can last for a lot of time. So one thing that I could say is strip your binaries, remove all the binaries, all the symbols from your binaries in such a way you can reduce the time you wait for your file to go through one node to the other. As I read, another point is that, as I said already before, set up a latency monitor to a network latency monitor so that you can discriminate between network glitches and real Bitcoin issues. And another important thing that we have learned is that the more peers are involved in the design of the test, the better are the propagation times. So to conclude, I have to say that outliers, the famous things that I was referring before, are still there, even if they are less in numbers in terms of the amount of outliers that we are seeing, and they are less pronounced in terms of time. They are still outliers, but they are not so big as they was before. The good news is that Bitcoin Unlimited developers is working on it to reduce it even further, and even other developers like Bitcoin Classic developers and Bitcoin Xthin developers are tackling this problem, looking at way to improve the network Bitcoin layers. So what I have to say, apart from the fact that Xthin technology is great and it worked very good. So I have to say goodbye and thanks for joining me during this presentation. Bye.